The information provided in this video is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute professional career, legal, financial, or business advice. The strategies and potential outcomes discussed are based on historical trends and generalized case studies within the freelance and marketing industries. Success in email marketing and client acquisition depends on numerous variables, including but not limited to individual skill level, niche selection, market conditions, and the quality of services offered. No specific results are promised or implied. Viewers are strongly encouraged to conduct their own due diligence, research local regulations such as the CAN-SPAM Act or GDPR where applicable, and consult with qualified professional advisors before implementing any new business systems or investing in marketing software and tools. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning, grabbing your coffee, and opening your laptop only to find that your primary source of income has vanished. Perhaps your LinkedIn account, where you spent years building a following, has been flagged by an automated bot and suspended without explanation. Maybe the freelance marketplace where you find 90% of your gigs has changed its search algorithm, and suddenly your profile, which used to be on page 1, is buried on page 50. This is not a hypothetical nightmare. It is a reality that thousands of high-level freelancers face every single year. Most independent professionals are operating their businesses on what we call rented land. You are building a digital empire on top of platforms that you do not own, do not control, and which do not owe you a single penny in lost revenue. The controversial truth of the modern freelance economy is that if you do not have a direct, private line of communication to your prospects and past clients, you do not actually own a business. You own a high-risk job where the boss can fire you at any moment without notice. The statistical reality of the current digital landscape is staggering. While social media platforms often see engagement rates of less than 2% for organic posts, historical trends in direct response marketing consistently show that email remains the most effective channel for conversion. Data suggests that the potential outcomes for those who master email communication are significantly higher than those who rely on the volatility of a social feed. In fact, many industry benchmarks have historically pointed toward a return on investment that exceeds $40 for every single dollar spent on email infrastructure. Yet, most freelancers are still stuck in the feast and famine cycle, spending 60% of their week chasing new leads on public boards instead of nurturing a private list of decision-makers who already know, like, and trust them. The problem we are solving today is the exhaustion of the hunt. Many freelancers feel like they are on a treadmill that never stops. You finish a project you celebrate for 5 minutes, and then the panic sets in because you realized you haven't been marketing yourself while you were working. This leads to the desperate cold outreach phase where you send out hundreds of generic messages, hoping anyone will respond. This approach is not only inefficient, it is damaging to your professional reputation. It positions you as a commodity, a seeker of work rather than a provider of value. Today, we are beginning a deep dive masterclass into the specific systems required to turn your freelance practice into a predictable client acquisition machine, using the power of email marketing. This is not about sending out a monthly newsletter that tells people what you had for lunch or what awards you just won. This is about architectural communication. We are going to explore how to build a bridge between the problems your ideal clients are facing and the specific solutions you provide. We are going to look at why the inbox is the last remaining sacred space on the internet. Unlike a social media feed, which is designed to distract the user and keep them scrolling, the inbox is a place where business happens. When someone opens an email from you, you have their undivided attention in a one-on-one environment. Throughout this series, we are going to analyze case studies of freelancers who transition from being platform-dependent to being audience-independent. We will look at a graphic designer who moved from competing with $5 logos on marketplaces to landing 5-figure branding contracts by simply nurturing a list of 200 local business owners. We will examine how a software developer used a weekly insight email to become the go-to authority in their niche, resulting in a 3-month waiting list of high-paying clients. These are not anomalies. They are the potential outcomes of a disciplined, value-first email strategy. The promise of this masterclass is simple but profound. By the end of these 10 parts, you will understand how to identify, capture, and nurture your ideal clients without ever feeling like a pushy salesperson. You will learn the psychological triggers that make a subject line unignorable. You will discover the technical setup required to ensure your messages actually land in the primary inbox, rather than the promotions tab or the spam folder. We will break down the exact sequence of emails that takes a total stranger from being unaware of your existence to asking you for a discovery call. We are going to move away from the noise of the public square and into the intimacy of the private message. You will learn how to leverage the rule of 7, the marketing principle that a prospect needs to hear from you multiple times before they are ready to buy, and how to automate those touchpoints so that your marketing runs while you are sleeping or focused on your craft. This is about creating an invisible pipeline. While your competitors are busy arguing in comment sections or praying for a viral post, you will be quietly building a database of the most influential people in your industry. We will also address the mental hurdles that stop most freelancers from starting. You might think your list is too small, or that you have nothing to say, or that you are bothering people. We will debunk these myths using data and historical marketing psychology. We will show you that a list of 50 highly targeted decision makers is infinitely more valuable than a following of 50,000 random users. This is about quality over quantity and precision over volume. In this first part, we are setting the foundation. We are acknowledging that the old way of freelancing, waiting for the phone to ring or hoping the algorithm favors you, is a recipe for burnout and financial instability. We are choosing instead to build an owned asset. We are choosing to treat our freelance practice like a professional firm. This masterclass is your roadmap to that transition. We will cover the specific anatomy of a high-converting lead magnet, the logistics of email service providers, and the art of the soft sell that keeps your unsubscribes low and your engagement high. If you have ever felt the sting of a client project ending with no new work in sight, or if you are tired of the race to the bottom on price-obsessed marketplaces, then this is the solution you have been looking for. We are not just talking about sending emails, we are talking about engineering a professional reputation that precedes you. We are talking about building a system where, instead of you looking for work, the work begins to look for you. Prepare to take notes, because we are going into the step-by-step details of how the most successful independent professionals in the US and beyond are using the inbox to dominate their markets. This is the end of the feast and famine cycle, and the beginning of your career as a sought-after expert. Let's begin the deep dive into the architecture of your new client acquisition system. To understand how a freelance business thrives in 2026, we must first address the foundational architecture of the email list itself. Most freelancers fail before they even send their first message because they treat their email list like a digital filing cabinet rather than a dynamic sales funnel. Imagine if Sarah, a freelance UX designer based in Seattle, decides she wants to stop relying on predatory freelance bidding sites. She sets up a basic sign-up form on her website that says, "Join my newsletter for updates." 3 months go by and she has exactly 4 subscribers: her mother, her best friend, and 2 spam bots. This is a common pitfall. In 2026, the average professional receives over 120 emails per day. People guard their inboxes with the same intensity they guard their physical homes. To gain entry, you cannot simply ask for permission. You must offer a significant value exchange. This value exchange is known as the lead magnet. Historical trends in digital marketing show that the most effective lead magnets for freelancers are those that solve a specific, high-stakes problem for the client immediately. If you are a freelance developer, a lead magnet titled 10 Tips for Better Code is too vague and offers no immediate utility. However, a lead magnet titled the 2026 E-commerce Security Audit, 5 vulnerabilities that could cost you your Q4 revenue is highly targeted. It identifies a specific pain point, financial loss, and offers a clear solution. Case studies of successful consultants in the US market suggest that potential outcomes for those using high-utility lead magnets include a subscriber conversion rate of 15 to 25%, compared to the industry average of less than 2% for generic newsletters. Let us look at Alex, a freelance motion designer in Austin. Alex realized that his ideal clients, marketing directors at mid-sized tech firms, were constantly struggling to explain complex SaaS products in under 60 seconds. Instead of a generic portfolio link, Alex created a downloadable storyboard template and a script writing guide specifically for B2B explainer videos. By offering this tool for free in exchange for an email address, Alex did not just build a list, he built a list of people who were actively planning to create a video. This is the difference between gathering followers and gathering prospects. To build this yourself in 2026, you must follow a granular step-by-step process. First, you must identify your ideal client profile or ICP. If you try to speak to everyone, you speak to no one. Are you looking for the founder of a 10-person startup? Or the head of procurement at a Fortune 500 company? Their problems are fundamentally different. Once the ICP is defined, you move to the creation of the lead magnet. In the current landscape, video audits, interactive calculators, or proprietary data reports perform significantly better than standard PDF white papers. For example, if you are a freelance accountant, an interactive tax savings calculator for independent contractors would be an irresistible offer. Once the asset is created, you need the technical infrastructure to deliver it. In 2026, the barrier to entry for email marketing software has never been lower, but the requirements for deliverability have never been higher. You must choose an email service provider, or ESP, that prioritizes sender reputation. Platforms like Beehive, ConvertKit, or MailerLite are popular choices, but the technical setup is where most freelancers stumble. You must configure your SPF, DKIM, and MARC records. These are technical authentication protocols that tell the recipient's email server that you are a legitimate sender and not a phisher. Historically, emails sent from unauthenticated domains have a much higher chance of being diverted to the spam folder, rendering your marketing efforts invisible. Next is the architecture of the landing page. This is a single-purpose web page designed to do one thing: convert a visitor into a subscriber. Imagine a clean, minimalist page with a bold headline that focuses on the result of your lead magnet. Do not use a header like "Welcome to my site." Use a header like "Save 10 hours on your content production this week." Below this, use 3 bullet points to explain exactly what they will find inside the download. Historical data indicates that removing the navigation menu from a landing page can increase conversion rates by up to 100% because it eliminates distractions. In 2026, mobile responsiveness is non-negotiable. Over 60% of your B2B prospects will likely see your landing page for the first time on a mobile device while they are between meetings or commuting. Now, consider the case of Jordan, a freelance content strategist in Nashville. Jordan used a case study as his lead magnet, but it was not just a testimonial. It was a deep dive into how he helped a local logistics company increase their organic lead flow by 40% in 6 months using a specific 3-pillar content framework. By sharing the exact steps he took, Jordan positioned himself as an authority. Potential outcomes of this transparency-based marketing include higher trust levels and a shorter sales cycle. When a prospect eventually jumps on a call with Jordan, they are not asking if he can do the job. They are asking when he can start. A critical component often overlooked is the double opt-in process. While it might seem counterintuitive to ask someone to confirm their subscription twice, in 2026, this is a vital step for list hygiene. It ensures that every person on your list actually wants to be there, and that your bounce rates stay low. High bounce rates and low engagement are signals to providers like Gmail and Outlook that your content is low quality, which can lead to your emails being throttled. Think of your email list as a private club. The lead magnet is the invitation, and the landing page is the door. If the invitation is compelling and the door is easy to find, you will attract the right people. But the real work begins the moment they step inside. Most freelancers make the mistake of delivering the lead magnet and then going silent for weeks. This is where the relationship dies. You have a window of approximately 2 to 5 minutes after someone subscribes where your brand is at the top of their mind. This is when the first automated sequence must trigger. In 2026, automation is not about being robotic. It is about being present when you cannot be there in person. Your delivery email must be instant, and it must do more than just provide a link. It should set the stage for what is coming next. It should tell the subscriber how often they will hear from you and what kind of value you will be providing in the future. This is the first touch point in a multi-step sequence designed to move them from a lead to a client. But what exactly do you say in that first email to ensure they don't just download your freebie and immediately hit the unsubscribe button? How do you craft a welcome sequence that builds so much authority that they start looking forward to your emails like they look forward to their favorite podcast? And more importantly, how do you transition from providing free value to asking for a high-ticket contract without sounding like a telemarketer? These are the questions that separate the struggling freelancers from the ones who are booked out months in advance. The specific psychological triggers and the 5-email sequence that every freelancer needs are what we will be dissecting next. We are just scratching the surface of the inbox economy, and the next layer is where the actual revenue is generated. We are moving from the setup to the strategy, and the first 60 seconds of your welcome sequence will determine the next 6 months of your income. The moment a prospect enters their email address and hits that submit button, a psychological clock starts ticking. In the fast-paced digital environment of 2026, the first 60 seconds after that click are the most critical moments of your entire relationship with a potential client. This is the period of highest intent and highest attention. If you wait 24 hours to send a manual reply, you have already lost the battle. You need an automated welcome sequence that makes them feel like they have finally found the expert they have been searching for. This sequence is not just a delivery mechanism for a PDF. It is a 5-day psychological bridge designed to transform you from a random freelancer into a trusted advisor. Let us look at the specific anatomy of the first email, which we call the delivery. The primary goal here is to fulfill the commitment you made on your landing page. If you promised a 2026 SEO audit checklist, that checklist needs to be the first thing they see. However, historical trends in the US freelance market show that the most successful professionals do not just drop a link and leave. Imagine Elena, a freelance UI/UX designer in New York. When a high-level marketing executive downloads her design system guide, Elena's first email does not just say "Here is your file." It starts with a subject line that stands out in a crowded inbox, such as, "Your guide is inside plus a quick question." Inside the email, Elena immediately provides the download link because she knows that making a user work for their incentive creates friction and resentment. But right after that link, she includes a 3-sentence paragraph that sets the stage. She says, "I created this because I saw too many brands losing up to 30% of their mobile conversions due to inconsistent button styling. I want to make sure you get the most out of this, so keep an eye out tomorrow for the one mistake most designers make when implementing these systems." This is the first open loop. By mentioning a specific pain point, losing 30% of conversions, she validates the client's decision to subscribe. By teasing a common mistake, she ensures they will look for her name in their inbox the following day. In 2026, the technical side of this first email is equally important. Data from major email service providers suggests that emails containing only a single link and no text are often flagged as potential phishing attempts by modern AI filters. To improve your deliverability, your first email should be at least 150 words long. It should be written in plain text or a very simple HTML format that looks like a personal message from one human to another. Large, colorful banners and corporate-looking templates are increasingly being ignored or filtered into the Promotions tab. The potential outcomes for freelancers using a personal, text-based approach include a 10 to 15% increase in initial open rates compared to those using heavy graphic designs. Now we move to the second email, which should be sent exactly 24 hours after the first. This is the origin story or the empathy email. Most freelancers make the mistake of making this email a resume. They list their degrees, their years of experience, and their past clients. But your clients do not care about your history. They care about their future. The goal of this email is to show them that you understand their world. Imagine a freelance copywriter in Chicago named Marcus. Marcus targets mid-sized SaaS companies. In his second email, he tells a story about a time he saw a company spend $50,000 on an ad campaign that failed because the landing page copy was too focused on features rather than benefits. Marcus explains the frustration he felt watching that waste of resources and describes the specific moment he realized there was a better way to communicate value. By sharing this story, he is not just saying "I am a copywriter." He is saying "I have seen the same problems you are facing, I have felt the frustration you feel, and I have developed a system to prevent it." Historical trends in direct response marketing indicate that vulnerability, when framed through a professional lens, is a massive trust builder. It positions you as a peer who is in the trenches with them, rather than a distant vendor. Step by step, the structure of this second email should follow a specific narrative arc. You start with the specific moment of tension or a common industry problem. Then, you move to the conflict, why traditional methods to solve that problem often fail. Next is the epiphany, the moment you discover the specialized approach you use today. Finally, you end with the value, how this discovery directly benefits the person reading the email. This structure keeps the reader engaged and builds a narrative that makes your service seem like the logical solution to their problems. Case studies of freelancers who implement this storytelling approach often show a significant decrease in price resistance. When a prospect understands the philosophy and the struggle behind your work, they stop viewing you as a line item on a spreadsheet and start viewing you as a strategic partner. In 2026, where AI can generate generic content in seconds, your unique human perspective and your specific professional stories are your strongest competitive advantages. To further increase retention during this welcome sequence, you must master the art of the call to value. While a call to action asks the user to do something for you, like book a call to value asks them to do something for themselves. At the end of every email in your first week, you should provide a small, actionable tip that they can implement in 5 minutes or less. For a freelance developer, This might be a one-line code snippet to improve site speed. For a freelance illustrator, it might be a tip on how to check if an image is properly formatted for different social platforms. This creates a psychological loop of reciprocity. Every time they see your name, their brain associates it with a small win. As we look toward the potential outcomes of this strategy, consider the math of the inbox. If you have a list of 500 targeted prospects and you maintain a 40% open rate because your content is consistently valuable, you have 200 decision makers listening to you every single day. In the US market, where the cost of customer acquisition through paid ads is rising annually, having this direct line of communication is like having a private printing press for leads. However, even with the perfect welcome sequence and the best stories, there is a wall that every freelancer eventually hits. This is the moment where you have to stop giving away free value and start asking for the business. This is where most people get nervous and revert to being pushy, or worse, they never ask at all and remain a permanent source of free information. How do you pivot from being the helpful expert to being the paid professional without losing the trust you have worked so hard to build? How do you craft a pitch that feels like a natural extension of the value you have already provided? The answer lies in a specific type of email we call the pivot, which uses a technique known as the transition of authority. We are going to break down the exact 3 email series that moves a subscriber from the educational phase into the high-intent sales phase. This is where the revenue actually lives. If you have been struggling to turn your subscribers into paying clients, the next part of this masterclass will show you the exact psychological triggers used by the highest paid consultants in 2026 to close 5-figure deals entirely through the inbox. We are about to look at the transition that turns a newsletter into a sales engine. The transition begins with the 3rd message in your sequence, which we define as the social proof or the results engine. By day 3, your subscriber has received your lead magnet and heard your origin story. They likely respect your expertise, but they still view you as a source of information rather than a service provider they need to hire. To bridge this gap, you must present a concrete example of your work in action without making it feel like a sales pitch. Imagine Jennifer, a freelance video strategist in Austin, Texas, who is navigating the competitive landscape of 2026. Instead of sending an email that says "I am available for hire," Jennifer sends a message titled "How a Small SaaS Firm Scaled Their Organic Reach by 300%. Inside this email, Jennifer breaks down a specific project. She describes the initial state of the client, low engagement and stagnant growth, and then details the specific methodology she applied. She doesn't just show the finished video. She explains the strategic reasoning behind the pacing, the hook, and the call to action she designed. This is critical because in 2026, clients are not just buying a deliverable, they are buying a result. Historical trends in the US freelance market indicate that when you lead with a case study that mirrors the prospect's current situation, the potential outcomes include a significantly higher response rate when you finally ask for the meeting. Jennifer ends this email not with a hard sell but with a question. Is this a metric your team is currently tracking? This invites a low-friction response and keeps the dialogue open. Moving into day 4, we implement the problem and solution matrix. This is the 4th email in your sequence, and its goal is to highlight the cost of inaction. In 2026, businesses are often more motivated by what they might lose than what they might gain. This is known as loss aversion. Imagine David, a freelance cybersecurity consultant in Denver. On day 4, his automated email addresses a specific regulation change that occurred in early 2026. He doesn't scare the reader. He educates them on the shift in the landscape and describes the potential outcomes for companies that fail to update their protocols. He frames himself as the guide who can help them navigate this complex change. David's email follows a specific step-by-step detail. He identifies the problem, he explains why the problem is more urgent now than it was 6 months ago, and he provides a high-level overview of the solution. By doing this, he creates a sense of professional urgency. He is not saying "hire me now or your business will fail." He is saying the world has changed, and here is how the most successful companies are adapting. This positions the freelancer as a strategic partner who is ahead of the curve. Data from professional service industries suggest that this type of authoritative positioning can allow a freelancer to charge a premium because they are solving a high-stakes problem rather than performing a low-value task. Now we reach day 5, which is the direct invitation. This is the pivot that most freelancers fear, but it is the most necessary. After 4 days of providing immense value, you have earned the right to ask for a conversation. However, the invitation in 2026 must be low pressure and highly personalized. Instead of a generic book a call button that links to a cluttered calendar, You use a technique known as the reply direct call to action. Imagine Chloe, a freelance copywriter in Miami. Her fifth email is short and focused. She says, "I have been thinking about the challenges you might be facing with your Q3 product launch. I have space to take on one more strategic project this month. If you would like to see if our approaches align, just reply to this email with the word launch, and I will send over some details." This works because it removes the psychological barrier of a formal sales call. It feels like a natural extension of the conversation you have been having all week. Historical trends show that reply-based calls to action often perform better for freelancers because they start a human-to-human interaction in the inbox, which is where the client already spends their time. In the US market, this approach respects the busy schedule of a decision maker while making it incredibly easy for them to say yes. To add more depth to this sequence, we must look at the technical optimization of these 5 days. In 2026, your email service provider should be set up to track not just opens but intent. If a subscriber clicks the link in your case study on day 3, but doesn't reply to your invitation on day 5, they are a high-intent lead. You can then trigger a specific follow-up sequence just for them. This is the difference between a static newsletter and a dynamic sales engine. You are using data to determine who is ready for a conversation and who needs more nurturing. Case studies of top-tier freelancers show that the potential outcomes for those who use behavioral tagging are a 40% increase in lead conversion compared to those who treat every subscriber the same. We also need to discuss the concept of the anti-pitch. This is a psychological trigger where you explicitly state who your service is not for. In your 5th email, you might say, "My approach is only for companies that are already doing at least 1 million in annual recurring revenue and are ready to invest in long-term growth. If you are still in the bootstrapping phase, my systems might be too robust for your current needs." This paradoxically makes you more desirable to your ideal client. It shows that you are not desperate for work, and that you have a specific, proven process that requires a certain level of commitment. Furthermore, we must consider the pacing and the subject lines of this entire sequence. In 2026, subject lines that are overly sensationalized or use clickbait are often filtered out by sophisticated inbox AI. The most effective subject lines are those that are boringly specific. Instead of "how to get more clients," use a subject line like the 2026 Client Acquisition Framework for New York agencies. The specificity tells the recipient that the content was curated specifically for them. As we conclude this part of the masterclass, you now have the architecture for a 5-day sequence that moves a stranger to a prospect. You have used the delivery to build trust, the origin story to build empathy, the case study to build authority, the problem matrix to build urgency, and the direct invitation to build a bridge to a paid engagement. But even with a perfect welcome sequence, a list will eventually go cold if you do not know how to maintain the relationship over months and years. What do you send on day 10, day 30, or day 90? How do you stay at the top of a client's mind without being annoying? This is where the concept of the infinity loop comes into play. Most freelancers stop after the first week, but the real wealth in freelancing is built in the follow-up and the long-term nurture. We are about to dive into the specific content calendar that keeps your pipeline full even when you aren't actively pitching. We will look at how to automate your thought leadership so that you become a permanent fixture in your prospect's inbox, ensuring that the moment they have a need, you are the only person they think of. The strategy for long-term dominance is what we will deconstruct next. The mistake that kills most freelance businesses in the long run is the assumption that if a prospect did not hire you during your initial 5-day welcome sequence, they are a lost cause. In reality, historical trends in the United States B2B service market suggest that a significant portion of high-value contract decisions are made 3 to 9 months after the initial point of contact. By stopping your communication after the first week, you are effectively handing your hottest leads to your competitors on a silver platter. To avoid this, you must implement what we call the infinity loop. This is a long-term nurturing strategy that ensures you remain the first person a prospect thinks of when their internal situation changes and they are finally ready to hire. Imagine Samantha, a freelance content marketing strategist based in Phoenix. Samantha has built a list of 400 marketing directors at mid-sized healthcare firms. After her initial welcome sequence, she transitions every subscriber into her weekly value loop. Every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m., her subscribers receive an email that provides a specific, high-level insight into the shifting landscape of 2026 healthcare marketing. Samantha doesn't talk about her services in every email. Instead, she focuses on becoming an indispensable resource. When a marketing director suddenly loses a key team member or receives a budget increase for a new campaign, they don't go to Google to find a consultant. They simply reply to the last email Samantha sent. This is the power of top-of-mind awareness. To build an effective infinity loop in 2026, you must rotate through 3 distinct types of content to keep the relationship fresh and prevent list fatigue. The first type is the industry insight. This is where you analyze a current trend, a new piece of data, or a shift in the market and explain exactly what it means for your client. For a freelance developer, this might be a deep dive into how new browser privacy updates in 2026 will affect site tracking. For a freelance illustrator, it might be an analysis of how authentic, hand-drawn styles are outperforming AI-generated imagery in high-end advertising. The goal is to prove that you are not just a pair of hands for hire, but a strategic thinker who is deeply embedded in their industry. The second type of content is the curated roundup. In an era of information overload, your clients are drowning in noise. You can provide immense value by acting as a filter. Once a month, send an email that lists 3 to 5 articles, tools, or resources that you have personally vetted and believe will help your clients achieve their goals. This requires very little writing on your part but positions you as a helpful peer. Case studies of consultants using this curation method show that it often results in the highest click-through rates because it provides immediate utility with very little effort required from the reader. The third type is the behind-the-scenes or personal reflection. In 2026, where digital interactions can often feel clinical and automated, human connection is a premium commodity. This is not about sharing what you had for breakfast. It is about sharing a professional challenge you faced and how you solved it. Maybe a project went sideways and you had to pivot your strategy. Maybe you invested in a new piece of software that drastically improved your workflow. Sharing these moments makes you relatable. It reminds the subscriber that there is a real, capable human being behind the screen. Potential outcomes of this approach include a stronger emotional bond with your audience, which historically leads to higher client retention and more referrals. Step by step, the implementation of this long-term strategy requires a disciplined batching process. You should not be writing these emails on the morning they are supposed to go out. Successful freelancers typically spend 1 afternoon a month writing 4 to 5 value-based emails and scheduling them in their email service provider. This ensures consistency, which is the most important factor in long-term email marketing. If you send an email every week for 3 months and then disappear for 6 weeks, you lose the psychological momentum you have built. In the mind of the prospect, you have become unreliable. Data from the 2026 freelance economy indicates that list hygiene is more critical than ever. As email filters become more sophisticated, having a high percentage of inactive subscribers can negatively impact your deliverability across the board. Every 6 months, you must perform a list scrub. This involves identifying subscribers who have not opened an email in the last 90 days and moving them into a specific re-engagement sequence. This sequence, often called the breakup series, consists of 2 or 3 short emails designed to gauge interest. A classic historical example is the 9-word email developed by Dean Jackson, which simply asks, "Are you still interested in?" If they do not respond, you must remove them from your list. While it is painful to see your subscriber count go down, the potential outcomes for your deliverability and engagement rates are well worth the sacrifice. Furthermore, we must address the concept of the micro-win. Every email you send should aim to give the reader a small, immediate victory. If you can help a prospect solve a 5-minute problem today, they will trust you with their 5-month project tomorrow. For a freelance SEO specialist, a micro-win could be a specific tip on how to optimize an image for search in under 60 seconds. For a freelance translator, it could be a quick guide on avoiding common cultural faux pas in a specific region. These small deposits into the relationship bank account eventually build up a massive balance of trust. As we look at the broader US market in 2026, we see that the most successful freelancers are moving away from the loud, aggressive pitching seen on social media and toward these quiet, consistent, high-value email relationships. It is a marathon, not a sprint. But the infrastructure you build during this marathon is what creates a resilient, recession-proof business. You are no longer at the mercy of a single platform's terms of service. You own the relationship, you own the data, and you own the attention. However, even the most valuable emails will fail if they are never opened. In an inbox crowded with corporate updates, personal messages, and automated notifications, your subject line is the only thing standing between your insight and the trash folder. Most freelancers treat the subject line as an afterthought, but it is actually the most important piece of copy you will ever write. If the subject line fails, the entire email fails. How do you write subject lines that cut through the noise of 2026 without resorting to clickbait? What are the specific psychological triggers that compel a busy CEO to click on your name specifically? And how do you format the actual body of the email to ensure they read all the way to the bottom? We are about to dive into the deep psychology of the inbox and the specific copywriting frameworks that ensure your emails are not just received, but truly consumed. The next part of this masterclass is where we turn your ideas into irresistible digital communication. In the landscape of 2026, the inbox is no longer just a digital mailbox. It is a high-stakes battlefield of attention where sophisticated artificial intelligence filters and overwhelmed human gatekeepers stand between you and a signed contract. To win here, you must understand that the subject line is the most important piece of real estate in your entire business. If your subject line fails to trigger a psychological open, the hundreds of hours you spent perfecting your craft and the thousands of words you wrote in the body of the email are effectively non-existent. Historically, the mistake most freelancers make is trying to sound professional in a way that feels corporate and cold. In 2026, corporate equals ignored. Let us look at a case study involving Robert, a freelance project management consultant based in San Francisco. Robert was struggling to get his emails opened by operations directors at mid-sized logistics firms. He was using traditional subject lines like quarterly efficiency report for logistics leaders or innovative solutions for supply chain management. His open rates were hovering around 12%. After analyzing historical trends in high-conversion direct response marketing, Robert shifted his strategy. He started using what we call the ultra-specific curiosity gap. He changed his subject line to, "That delay in the Oakland warehouse." Suddenly, his open rate skyrocketed to 64%. Why? Because the subject line was specific, relevant, and it created a loop in the reader's mind that could only be closed by opening the email. It felt like a message from a colleague rather than a pitch from a vendor. The psychology of the 2026 inbox is rooted in the Zeigarnik effect, a psychological phenomenon suggesting that people remember uncompleted or interrupted tasks better than completed ones. A great subject line creates an uncompleted task in the prospect's brain. When you use a subject line like the missing piece in your Q3 strategy, you are presenting an open loop. The prospect needs to know what is missing to feel a sense of completion. However, specificity is the anchor that prevents this from becoming clickbait. If you are a freelance developer, a subject line like a quick fix for your checkout page works because it identifies a specific location and a specific problem. It implies that you have been looking at their business specifically, which builds immediate rapport. Moving from the subject line to the preview text, that short snippet of text that appears after the subject line in most email clients, is the next step in this deep dive. In 2026, most users are triaging their inboxes on mobile devices while multitasking. The preview text acts as a second subject line. If your preview text says something generic like, "Hi, my name is," or "I hope this email finds you well," you are wasting valuable space. Instead, use the preview text to provide the first piece of value. If your subject line is about a checkout page fix, your preview text should be, "I noticed the latency on your mobile checkout is currently 4.2 seconds. This immediate data point proves you are an expert who has done the work before even hitting send." Now, let us discuss the body of the email and a technique known as the slippery slope. Once the prospect opens the email, your only goal for the first sentence is to get them to read the second sentence. Your goal for the second sentence is to get them to read the third. Imagine Linda, a freelance marketing analyst in Boston. When she emails a potential client, she uses a formatting style that prioritizes scannability. In 2026, walls of text are the enemy. Linda keeps her paragraphs to no more than 2 sentences. She uses white space to create a visual rhythm that draws the eye down the page. Historical data from heat mapping studies shows that B2B readers scan in an F pattern, looking at the top line and then skimming down the left side. By using short, punchy sentences and bullet points, Linda ensures her key value propositions are seen even by the busiest executive. Another critical framework for your body copy is the bridge method. You start by describing the prospect's current reality, the pain they are feeling right now. Then you describe the potential outcomes of a future where that pain is gone. Finally, you provide the bridge, which is your specific service or insight. For example, if you are a freelance motion designer, you might say most tech explainers are currently seeing a 50% drop-off in the first 10 seconds. Imagine if your viewers stayed engaged until the final call to action, leading to a significant increase in demo signups. I developed a pacing framework specifically for SaaS products that addresses this exact drop-off point. This moves the conversation from what you do to what they get. We must also talk about the PS or postscript, historical trends in direct mail marketing, which have translated perfectly into the digital inbox of 2026, show that the PS is often the second most read part of an email after the subject line. Many readers will scroll straight to the bottom to see how long the email is and who sent it. This is where you place your most compelling secondary offer or a piece of social proof. A PS like PS. I recently helped a company in the fintech space reduce their churn by 15% using this method. Happy to send over the brief if you are interested. Acts as a low-pressure hook for the skimmers. In 2026, technical formatting is just as vital as the words themselves. You must avoid using too many images, as many corporate email servers block images by default, leaving your email looking like a broken mess of empty boxes. Stick to plain text or very simple clean HTML. Furthermore, avoid using industry jargon that obscures your meaning. The most successful freelancers in the US market write at a 5th grade reading level. This is not about insulting the intelligence of your client. It is about respecting their time. Clear communication is a sign of a clear mind, and clients in 2026 are looking for partners who make their lives easier, not more complicated. Case studies from the creative sector show that incorporating a personalized video link, often called the Loom method, within the body of an email can increase response rates by over 200%. Imagine if James, an illustrator in Atlanta, sends an email to an art director. Instead of just attaching a portfolio, he includes a thumbnail of a video where he is holding a sketch specifically designed for that director's upcoming campaign. This level of personalization is almost impossible to ignore. It proves that James is not a bot, and that he has invested time into this specific relationship. The potential outcomes of this high-touch approach include not just a higher response rate, but the ability to command much higher project fees because the perceived value of the work is tied to a visible human effort. As we master the art of the individual email, we must realize that even the best copy cannot save a bad list. You could have the most compelling subject line in the world, but if it lands in the inbox of someone who doesn't have the budget, the authority, or the need for your services, you are shouting into the void. This leads us to a critical junction in our masterclass. How do you find the actual verified email addresses of the decision makers you need to reach? How do you distinguish between a lead and a true prospect? And once you have those addresses, how do you manage the delicate transition from a cold outreach to a warm, ongoing professional relationship without ever being flagged as spam? The next level of this deep dive involves the mechanics of lead sourcing and the ethics of outreach in the 2026 regulatory environment. We are going to look at the specific tools and search parameters that allow you to bypass the generic info@company.com addresses and get directly into the private folders of the C-suite. We are moving from the psychology of the message to the strategy of the hunt, and the tools we are about to discuss will change the way you view the internet as a source of business. The hidden infrastructure of the freelance lead machine is what we are uncovering next. In the digital ecosystem of 2026, the concept of a lead has fundamentally shifted from a quantitative metric to a qualitative asset. For the modern freelancer, the ability to identify and verify the direct contact information of a decision maker is the difference between a thriving 6-figure practice and a struggling side hustle. Historically, freelancers relied on mass scraping tools that would pull generic info@company.com addresses, resulting in messages that were instantly deleted by executive assistants or caught in corporate spam traps. Today, the infrastructure of the freelance lead machine is built on surgical precision and technographic data. This means you are not just looking for a company. You are looking for a specific set of circumstances and the one individual with the authority to sign your contract. To understand this, let us look at the case of Michael, a freelance cybersecurity technical writer based in Austin, Texas. Michael does not waste time browsing general job boards. Instead, he uses advanced search parameters and intent-based data tools to identify companies that are currently expanding their cloud infrastructure. By using platforms like Apollo or LinkedIn Sales Navigator with specific filters, Michael can see which companies have recently posted job listings for security engineers or which firms have just integrated a specific software stack. This is known as technographic sourcing. If a company just started using a high-end enterprise security tool, they likely need specialized documentation or white papers to explain their new protocols to stakeholders. Michael is not guessing. He is responding to a demonstrated need. The The first step in building your own lead machine is mastering the Boolean search string. In 2026, search engines and professional databases have become highly sensitive to syntax. If you are a freelance graphic designer looking for creative directors in the fintech space, a generic search is useless. Instead, you would use a string like cite linkedin.com/in and creative director or head of design in fintech not agency. This specific string tells the database to find individuals with those exact titles in that specific industry, while excluding those who work at other agencies and might be your competitors. Historical trends show that freelancers who utilize these advanced search strings reduce their prospecting time by over 60%, while increasing the relevance of their list. Once you have identified the right person, the next challenge is finding their verified, direct work email. Sending a message to a personal Gmail or a generic contact form is often viewed as unprofessional or intrusive. In 2026, tools like Hunter.io, RocketReach, and Lusha have evolved to provide high-accuracy verification. However, you must never take a tool's word for it. Historical data indicates that a bounce rate higher than 3% can severely damage your sender reputation, leading to your emails being throttled by major providers like Gmail and Outlook. Step by step, you must run every lead through a secondary verification service like ZeroBounce or NeverBounce. These services ping the recipient's mail server without sending an actual email, confirming that the inbox exists and is active. This hygiene step is non-negotiable for long-term deliverability. Consider the scenario of Jessica, a freelance commercial translator in Miami. Jessica targets U.S. companies looking to expand into the Brazilian market. Instead of looking for any company, she monitors trigger events. A trigger event is a public signal that a company is about to enter a period of growth or change. For Jessica, this might be a press release announcing a new partnership in South America, or a news article about a Series B funding round specifically for international expansion. When she finds a trigger event, she identifies the VP of International Growth. By the time Jessica sends her email, she is not a stranger asking for work. She is a specialist offering a solution to a problem the company just publicly acknowledged. This approach transforms the cold outreach into a warm, strategic invitation. The technical infrastructure of your outreach is just as important as the leads themselves. In 2026, you should never send cold outreach from your primary business domain. If your main website is at yourname.com, you should purchase a secondary domain like yourname.co or yourname.io specifically for prospecting. This creates a firewall between your outreach activities and your primary business communications. If your secondary domain is ever flagged for high spam reports, your main business email remains unaffected. Furthermore, a new domain must be warmed up. Historically, sending 50 emails a day from a brand new domain will trigger immediate red flags. You must use an automated warm-up tool for at least 14 to 21 days, which slowly increases the sending volume and generates positive engagement signals, proving to the servers that you are a legitimate human sender. We must also address the legal and ethical framework of 2026. In the United States, the CAN-SPAM Act remains the standard, requiring that you provide a clear way for recipients to opt out and that you include a physical business address in your footer. However, the ethical standard has surpassed the legal one. Permissionless outreach is only effective when it is highly relevant. If you are sending a generic pitch to someone who has no need for your services, you are spamming. If you are sending a tailored, researched insight to someone who is currently facing the exact problem you solve, you are providing a service. Potential outcomes for those who maintain high ethical standards include lower complaint rates and a higher likelihood of being referred to other departments within a company. Now imagine if you had a list of 100 high-intent leads, all verified, all segmented by their specific trigger events, and all landing in your secondary domain's warm inbox. You have the infrastructure, you have the targets, but what do you actually say in that first cold email to ensure it does not get deleted in the first 3 seconds? Most freelancers fail here by being too long-winded, too self-centered, or too desperate. They lead with I am or I can, rather than focusing on the client's bottom line. There is a specific 4-sentence framework that has been proven through decades of direct response marketing to be the most effective way to initiate a conversation with a stranger. It involves a personalized observation, a specific value proposition, a piece of undeniable social proof, and a low-friction question. This framework is the key to turning a cold list into a hot calendar. If you can master this 4-sentence structure, you will never have to worry about where your next client is coming from. How do you craft a personalized observation that doesn't sound like a template? How do you describe your value proposition in 10 words or less? And what is the specific question that makes it almost impossible for a busy executive to say no? We are about to break down the exact scripts that are currently dominating the US freelance market. We are moving from the technical setup of the machine to the psychological precision of the message. The architecture of the perfect cold email is what we are dissecting next. And it is simpler than you think, yet more powerful than anything you have tried before. In a high-stakes environment of 2026, the greatest indicator of professional authority is brevity. When an executive opens an email from a stranger, their subconscious brain is immediately scanning for two things. How long is this going to take to read? And is this person a peer or a solicitor? If they see a wall of text, their brain classifies you as a low-status solicitor who is trying to justify their existence through word count. However, if they see for surgical, high-impact sentences, they see someone whose time is as valuable as theirs. Historical trends in high-level US business communication show that the most successful cold outreach in 2026 follows a specific four-sentence architecture that bypasses the natural defensive filters of the C-suite. The first sentence is the personalized observation. This is where you prove in less than 5 seconds that you are not a bot and that this is not a template. In 2026, generic personalization like I saw your recent post on LinkedIn is no longer sufficient. Everyone is using AI to automate that level of flattery. To truly stand out, you must use the 5-minute deep research rule. Imagine Ethan, a freelance DevOps consultant based in Chicago. Ethan wants to work with a specific fintech startup that recently migrated to a multi-cloud architecture. His first sentence doesn't just mention the migration. It references a specific technical challenge the CTO mentioned in a niche developer forum or a specialized industry podcast. He might write, "I caught your segment on the Cloud Native Infrastructure podcast and was particularly struck by your approach to latency issues during the Q1 migration." This sentence does 3 things. It validates the recipient's work, it proves Ethan is an insider in the industry, and it creates an immediate psychological bond based on shared expertise. The second sentence is the value bridge. This is where you pivot from their world to the specific problem you solve, without ever mentioning your services yet. You are identifying a gap. Ethan's second sentence might be, "Many firms in the fintech space are finding that these types of migrations often lead to a 12% increase in silent failures within their deployment pipelines." By stating a specific data point, historically a high-tension area for CTOs in 2026, Ethan is demonstrating that he understands the hidden costs of their recent move. He isn't saying "I can help you." He is saying "I know exactly what is keeping you up at night right now." This is the transition from observer to advisor. The third sentence is the credibility anchor. This is where you provide undeniable proof that you have solved this exact problem before. In 2026, vague claims like "I have years of experience" are ignored. You must use quantifiable potential outcomes based on past case studies. Ethan's third sentence would look like this. "I recently implemented an automated observability framework for a mid-market firm that reduced their post-migration failure rate by 40% while cutting cloud spend by 15%. This sentence is dense with value. It provides social proof, it mentions a specific result, and it appeals to both the technical and the financial interests of the decision-maker. It positions Ethan not as a freelancer looking for a gig, but as a solution provider who has already delivered the results the CTO currently needs. The fourth sentence is the interest-based call to action. This is the most critical shift in the 2026 outreach model. Historically, freelancers were taught to ask for 15 minutes on a calendar or a specific time for a Zoom call. In the current landscape, this is a mistake. Asking for time creates a high-friction decision for the prospect. Instead, you must ask for interest. Ethan's final sentence is, "Would you be opposed to seeing the short brief on how we structured that observability framework?" This is a low-friction question that requires a simple yes or no. By asking if they would be opposed, you are leveraging a psychological principle where it is often easier for humans to say no than yes. By saying no, they are actually saying "No, I would not be opposed," which is a commitment to seeing your value. This turns the inbox into a place of discovery, rather than a place of obligation. Step by step, you are building a narrative that feels like a peer-to-peer recommendation. But even with this perfect 4-sentence structure, you are competing with the AI gatekeepers of 2026. Most executives now use AI-driven inbox managers that categorize emails based on intent. To bypass these filters, your email must avoid commercial trigger words. Instead of using words like service, offering, or hire, you use words like framework, brief, or observation. These are the words of a consultant, not a salesperson. Let us look at a case study involving Ava, a freelance brand strategist in Los Angeles. Ava targets founders of luxury e-commerce brands. Her 4-sentence email to a high-end watchmaker looked like this. I noticed the recent shift in your visual storytelling toward heritage-focused narratives in your latest Instagram campaign. Many luxury brands are finding that this pivot can sometimes alienate younger Gen Z buyers who prioritize transparency over tradition. I recently developed a brand-bridging strategy for a European jeweler that maintained their heritage appeal, while increasing their engagement with under 30 buyers by 22%. Would it be worth a quick reply to see the case study on how we balance those two demographics? This email is a masterclass in precision. It identifies a potential risk, offers a proven solution, and asks for permission to provide more value. The potential outcomes for Ava were a 40% response rate and 3 discovery calls in a single week. However, we must also address the reality of persistence. Data from the 2026 freelance market indicates that 50% of sales happen after the 5th touchpoint, yet 70% of freelancers give up after the first email. You need a follow-up sequence that adds value rather than just checking in. Never send an email that says, "I am just following up on my previous message." This is the digital equivalent of a nudge, and it is universally disliked. Instead, your second email sent 3 days later should provide a new piece of value. You might say, "I saw this article on the new 2026 privacy regulations and thought it might impact your current cloud strategy. Thought you might find it useful." This shows that you are thinking about their business even when they aren't paying you. The third follow-up, sent 7 days after the first, is the social proof expansion. This is where you share a different result or a testimonial from a peer in their industry. The fourth and final email is the breakup. This is where you politely close the loop. You say, "I haven't heard back, so I'll assume this isn't a priority for your team right now. I'll keep you in my files and reach out if I see anything else that might help your growth." Paradoxically, this email often gets the highest response rate because it triggers a sense of loss in the prospect. They realize they are about to lose access to a high-value expert. Mastering this 4-sentence architecture and the value-based follow-up sequence is how you move from the bottom 90% of freelancers to the top 10%. You are no longer chasing, you are attracting. You are no longer a commodity, you are a specialist. But what happens when they say yes? How do you move from a replied email to a signed contract without the conversation stalling? How do you handle the price objection before it even comes up? The transition from a warm lead to a paying client is the most delicate part of the process. There is a specific way to structure your first discovery call and your follow-up proposal to ensure the momentum you built in the inbox carries through to the bank account. We are about to look at the psychological closing techniques that top-tier US freelancers use to secure 5-figure retainers. The endgame of the email marketing masterclass is what we are deconstructing next. When that reply hits your inbox, the one where the prospect says yes, please send that brief over. Your adrenaline might spike, but your professionalism must remain calculated and precise. In the landscape of 2026, the transition from an interested lead to a paying client is where the most money is left on the table. Most freelancers make the mistake of becoming a subservient order taker the moment they get a positive response. They send the requested file and then wait passively for the client to tell them what to do next. This is a total collapse of authority. To secure 5-figure retainers, you must maintain the role of the strategic advisor throughout the entire closing process. This involves a specific 3-step bridge that moves the conversation from the inbox to a high-value discovery call, and finally to a signed contract. Let us look at the first step, the value-added delivery. Imagine Brian, a freelance cybersecurity technical writer in Seattle. When a CTO replies to his cold email asking for the case study mentioned, Brian doesn't just attach a PDF. In 2026, historical trends show that B2B decision-makers are overwhelmed with static content. Brian instead sends a personalized, 2-minute video walkthrough of the case study using a screen recording tool. In this video, he points to specific data points and says, "I wanted to highlight page 3 where we reduced documentation overhead by 20%. I noticed your team is currently using a similar tech stack, which is why this specific efficiency gain is relevant to your Q3 goals." By doing this, Brian has transformed a generic asset into a bespoke consultation. He isn't just sending a file, he is providing a diagnostic insight. This level of effort in 2026 is what separates the top 1% of freelancers from the rest of the market. Step by step, the delivery email should follow a very specific structure. First, you provide the requested link or file immediately. Second, You provide a one-sentence summary of the most relevant takeaway for their specific company. Third, you ask a diagnostic question that forces them to think about their internal gaps. For example, is your current team spending more than 5 hours a week on manual updates for these systems? This question is a trap for the status quo. If they answer yes, they have just admitted they have a problem that costs them money. If they answer no, they are signaling they might be a more advanced lead, allowing you to pivot your strategy. Potential outcomes for freelancers using this diagnostic approach include a 50% increase in discovery call bookings compared to those who simply send the file and ask for a meeting. The second step in the bridge is the triage call. In 2026, nobody wants a sales call. They want a consultation. When you suggest a meeting, you must frame it as a project scoping or strategy alignment session. Imagine Sarah, a freelance UX researcher in Denver. Her email to schedule the call says, "To make sure I'm not wasting your time, let's jump on a 10-minute triage call. We'll look at your current user flow and see if the frameworks from the case study actually apply to your specific user base." This removes the pressure. It's only 10 minutes, it's a triage, and the focus is on their user base, not Sarah's services. Historical trends indicate that low-friction invitations like this have a much higher acceptance rate than asking for a full hour. During this triage call, your goal is not to pitch. Your goal is to identify the financial or operational cost of their current problem. In the 2026 freelance economy, you are not selling hours. You are selling the mitigation of risk or the acceleration of growth. You must ask questions like, if this issue isn't resolved by the end of the year, what is the impact on your department's KPIs? Once they articulate the cost of the problem, the price of your solution becomes a secondary concern. This is the psychological foundation of the 5-figure retainer. You are no longer a luxury expense. You are an essential investment. The third step is the 3-option proposal. Most freelancers send a single price for a single scope of work. This forces the client into a binary decision. Yes or no. In 2026, you must give the client a choice of how to work with you, which changes the decision from whether to hire you to how to hire you. Let us look at a case study involving Carlos, a freelance software developer in Austin. After a successful discovery call, Carlos sends a proposal with 3 distinct tiers. Option 1 is the basic implementation, which solves the core problem but requires the client's internal team to do the heavy lifting. Option 2 is the accelerated growth package, which is the most popular and involves Carlos handling the entire lifecycle of the project. Option 3 is the enterprise partnership, which includes ongoing maintenance, team training, and weekly strategic consulting. Historical data from US-based professional services shows that when 3 options are presented, approximately 60% of clients will choose the middle option, while 15% will opt for the highest tier. This effectively increases your average deal size by 20 to 30% without any additional pitching. Furthermore, having a high-priced third option makes the middle option look like a bargain. This is a psychological principle known as anchoring. Carlos anchors the value of the project at the high-end price point, making his target middle tier seem like the most logical and cost-effective choice. But what happens when the client pushes back on price in the inbox? In 2026, where budgets are under constant scrutiny by AI-driven procurement software, price objections are inevitable. The worst thing you can do is lower your price immediately. This signals that your initial price was arbitrary and that you don't value your own expertise. Instead, use the scope pivot technique. If a client says the proposal is out of their budget, reply with, "I understand that budget constraints are a reality for Q4. Which part of the scope are you comfortable removing to bring the investment down to your target number?" This maintains the integrity of your pricing while putting the client in charge of the trade-off. Historically, this often leads to the client finding the extra budget because they realize they don't actually want to lose any part of the high-value scope you proposed. Another critical technique for the 2026 inbox is the ROI reframe. If a client is hesitating, you send a short 3-sentence email. You say, "I've been looking at the numbers we discussed. If we achieve even half of the target efficiency gain, the project will have paid for itself within the first 4 months. Would it be helpful to see the breakdown of those projections again?" This shifts the focus from the cost of the project to the cost of the delay. Every month they don't hire you is a month they are losing money or missing out on growth. In the US market, efficiency and speed to market are the 2 most powerful drivers for decision makers. As you master this closing sequence, you will find that your email marketing has created a virtuous cycle. You have gone from cold outreach to trusted advisor. You have used data, social proof, and psychological anchoring to position yourself as the only logical choice. But even as you land these high-value contracts, there is one final piece of the puzzle. How do you scale this? How do you move from doing all of this manually to having a system that generates these leads and manages these closes while you are focused on doing the actual work for your clients? The final frontier of the freelance email machine is automation and team building. How do you use the latest 2026 AI tools to handle the research and the first-touch outreach without losing that essential human touch? And how do you transition from a solo freelancer to a boutique agency owner, using the same email principles we have discussed throughout this masterclass? We are about to conclude our journey by looking at the future of your business. The strategy for total market dominance and the blueprint for your freelance empire is what we are deconstructing in the final part of this series. You are one step away from a completely automated lead generation engine. The final stage of the freelance evolution in 2026 is the transition from a manual operator to a systems architect. You have mastered the psychology of the inbox, you have built your 4-sentence cold outreach framework, and you have established an infinity loop for long-term nurturing. However, as your reputation grows and your project fees increase, you will eventually encounter the ultimate bottleneck: your own time. In the high-velocity US freelance market, the most successful professionals do not spend their afternoons manually searching for email addresses or hitting send on individual messages. They leverage a sophisticated layer of automation and human delegation that allows their lead generation engine to run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, regardless of whether they are working on a client deliverable or taking a vacation. This is the blueprint for total market dominance and the official transition from being a freelancer to becoming a boutique agency founder. To illustrate this, let us look at the case study of Thomas, a freelance cloud infrastructure consultant based in Atlanta, Georgia. In early 2026, Thomas was billing $400 an hour but found himself stuck in a cycle where he could only market himself when he had a gap in his schedule. This led to inconsistent revenue and high levels of stress. To scale, Thomas implemented what we call the automated research stack. He utilized a combination of 2026-era AI agents and data scraping tools like Clay and Apollo to identify trigger events in real time. For example, whenever a mid-market tech company in the Southeast US announced a new round of funding or a leadership change in their engineering department, an automated script would verify the decision-maker's email and pull 3 specific data points about their current tech stack from public SEC filings and GitHub repositories. Step by step, Thomas's system worked like this. First, the AI agent would categorize the lead based on intent. If the company was actively hiring for DevOps roles, they were flagged as a high-priority lead. Second, the system would populate a custom field in his CRM with a personalized observation based on the company's recent public activity. Third, this data was pushed into an automated sending platform like Instantly or Woodpecker, which was configured with his secondary domains. Historically, the potential outcomes for freelancers who implement this level of technical automation include a 300% increase in outreach volume without any decrease in personalization quality. Thomas went from sending 10 emails a week to sending 200 highly targeted messages, all while he was focused on executing high-level consulting for his existing clients. However, automation is only half of the equation. In 2026, the human touch is still the primary driver of trust. This is where the role of the inbox manager comes in. As your volume increases, you will receive replies that require nuanced, human conversation. You cannot automate a relationship. Thomas hired a part-time junior strategist to act as his gatekeeper. This individual was trained using a specific standard operating procedure, or SOP. The SOP outlined exactly how to handle different types of replies. If a prospect asked for a case study, the manager would send the personalized video link. If a prospect raised a price objection, the manager would use the scope pivot framework we discussed in the previous part. Thomas only stepped into the conversation once a discovery call was booked. This allowed him to maintain his position as the high-level expert while the machinery of his business handled the heavy lifting of the sales process. Imagine if you could remove yourself from the first 80% of the sales cycle. In 2026, this is not just a dream. It is a competitive necessity. Data from the US freelance economy indicates that the top 5% of earners spend less than 10% of their time on administrative prospecting. They have built an owned asset, their email list, and an automated system to grow it. This system provides them with a level of career security that no platform or algorithm can ever offer. They have effectively decoupled their income from their personal manual labor. As you look toward the potential outcomes of this long-term strategy, you must consider the compounding value of your list. Every person who stays in your infinity loop is a potential client for the next 5 years. Historical trends show that as a list grows in size and quality, the cost of acquiring a new client drops significantly. You are no longer paying for ads or competing on price-based marketplaces. You are harvesting the trust you have sown over months and years. This is how a solo freelancer scales into a boutique agency. You can begin to hire other specialists to handle the delivery of the work, while you focus on the high-level strategy and the expansion of your email engine. We must also discuss the 2026 evolution of the email list into a multi-product revenue stream. Once you have a list of 500 to 1,000 decision-makers who trust your expertise, you are no longer limited to selling your time. Case studies of successful consultants show that they often launch digital products, specialized workshops, or high-level masterminds to their existing email audience. Because the trust is already established through your weekly value loop, the conversion rates for these secondary offers are historically much higher than those seen in cold traffic. You are effectively building a media company around your expertise. The final pillar of the masterclass is the maintenance of the machine. Even the best automated systems require a quarterly audit. You must review your deliverability metrics, update your lead magnets to reflect the current 2026 market conditions, and refine your 4-sentence scripts based on the feedback you receive in the inbox. The market is not static, and your email strategy shouldn't be either. You must stay ahead of the curve by constantly testing new subject lines and new types of value-based content. As we conclude this deep dive, you now possess the complete architecture for a professional freelance business powered by email marketing. You have the disclaimer to protect your practice, the viral hook to capture attention, the 5-day welcome sequence to build authority, the infinity loop to maintain awareness, the 4-sentence cold outreach to initiate relationships, and the automation framework to scale your growth. You are no longer a victim of the feast and famine cycle. You are the operator of a predictable, resilient, and highly profitable client acquisition system. The transition from a struggling freelancer to a dominant market leader is not about working harder. It is about building better systems. The inbox is your most powerful tool in 2026. While the rest of the world is distracted by the latest social media trend, you will be quietly and consistently building wealth and influence through the most personal and direct channel available. Your empire is built one email at a time. But what happens when you reach the limits of organic growth? What if you want to accelerate this entire process tenfold using the same principles but with the power of paid traffic? The journey doesn't end with the inbox. It only begins there. We have covered the organic engine, but there is an entire world of paid acquisition and high-end funnel architecture that can take your boutique agency to the 7-figure mark. If you are ready to see how the most successful US agencies fuel their email lists with paid precision, then you are ready for the next phase of your business evolution. We are about to step out of the inbox and into the world of paid scaling, where the same psychological triggers we've discussed today are applied to a global audience. The next level of your growth is waiting.